Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season 2 premiere of Tracker, a great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we get introduced to Coulter breaking into someone's house, and you're like, what's this all about? And it's related to a case that's been that case that he couldn't let go for the past 10 years. And I'm wondering, other than its family situation in this particular case, a girl named Gina went missing and for the past 10 years, and it's never been clear what happened to her. There's a guy who's a major suspect in it, Frank, but nothing stuck, to the point that apparently Coulter's harassed him year after year after year because Coulter knows in his gut this guy's responsible but doesn't have anything concrete enough on him. I'm gonna fuse this with the end of the episode where we get introduced to Gina's sister, played by Floriana Lima, which I want to say the first thing I saw her in that I'm aware of was she played Riggs' wife in the Lethal Weapon TV show. She was in 2-ish seasons of Supergirl. She was also in season 2 of The Punisher. I feel like there might have been something else she was in that I don't remember, but those are the projects that immediately click in my head. But that's why I'm wondering, her and Coulter kind of, hook up, and you're like, oh, that's messy. Because I'm sure that there's so much complicated feelings, because Coulter's got a lot of guilt over not having found your sister. You have this comfort of this is the one person that's out there still really looking for your sister, so it's in this weird savior. It's such a... There's comfort in it, but it also feels like it's kind of the wrong kind of comfort, but it's whatever gets you through that pain, but it's is this the right thing? I feel like it's not a good thing for either one of you, but who knows? Like I said, I don't know if just knowing the circumstances of it's just you want to make her feel better. She just wants to feel something good because it's dragged on for years, and she's tired of hope, because hope can be just as painful as despair, because some arguments could be that it's even worse because you're full of hope and then being dragged to despair is different from just being straight out despair and drowning in that. It's a different type of pain. So I'm so curious to find out more about this particular case. Once again, Coulter knows, he found, was it some soil samples or some dirt, but he kept it in the freezer. Definitely seems weird. He's I'm sure Frank was there. I'm interested to find out why they were never able to make anything stick. Does Frank have a solid alibi or whatever? The fact is, he never even called the police on Coulter either, even though he would have legally been in his rights. You broke into my house, but it almost feels like he wants to, it almost might be a game to him. Who knows? We might find out he actually had nothing to do with this, and he might have been innocent the entire time, or maybe he is just that much of a sociopath/psychopath, and he's actually toying with Coulter. Once again, why not just call the cops? But it might also be the thing of he might have that type of reputation where everyone believes he did it, so even the cops wouldn't show him any grace, type of situation. I don't know. We've only just got introduced to the case, so I think that's going to be the overarching thing, which is going to be interesting too, considering we have all that stuff with his family, which I'm wondering, is that taking a back seat this season, or is that going to be the 1B plot where it's the Grace, not Grace, Gina case is going to be the 1A plot. I'm curious if that's how that's going to play out. Because where season 1 ended, there's the threads of, hey, your dad's research, your sister has it and she hasn't said anything. She literally saw you and she's had it for the past year, and she saw you back in episode 11 and she didn't say anything about it, especially when you're raising all these questions about your family and stuff. So I am curious to see how the storyline plays out this season in that regard. But this particular case involves an entire family going missing. The uncle, the brother, I forgot Ted's brother's name. Was it Craig? He hires Coulter to find his missing family. It's his brother Ted and his wife Connie and their 2 children. And obviously, immediately Coulter knew something was off with the case. It's they left their phones behind. This doesn't look like they just got dragged out. He's there's something just off about it. And he gets introduced to Martinez, and she was acting a little weird. And I was at first I was are you not going to be a real marshal or something? Because he was why are the feds getting involved? And he came up with an excuse of, oh yeah, there was a family in Florida apparently that a guy won the lottery and then he got robbed for all the money, made it a federal crime. So we want to make sure this isn't the same thing happening here. here. I'm like, that's weird. And then he runs into her quote-unquote partner, which I immediately knew something was up the moment Coulter, like, noticed his shoes. He's like, oh, those don't seem like the right shoes for the environment. And he kind of shrugged it off. Which at first, when Coulter was doing that, I thought he was playing coy, being like, oh, actually, no, you're not an FBI agent. Part of me feels like Coulter is very sharp for him to miss that, because I immediately was like, oh, this guy's not an FBI agent, isn't he? He's like a bad guy, isn't he? He has something to do with his family's disappearance. That was my immediate thought, which is so interesting, too, because obviously I was excited when I saw the actor, because I was like, oh, the actor's name is Matt Long. I best know him for playing Zeke in Manifest, which it's so interesting when you break stuff down like that, because who plays Coulter's sister? Melissa Roxburgh, who played Michaela in the show Manifest. So they were in the show together, and those particular characters had a relationship. So it's interesting how that all works out like that. But either way, like I said, I thought Coulter was being coy, but anytime like they ran into each other a second time later on the episode at that gas station or wherever, he was so like, oh, I can't believe you just showed up here. I'm like, don't you think it's weird, Coulter, that he showed up with no backup? I feel like he would have come here with his partner or whatever, but I don't know, it just seemed weird. Especially because they also made sure to show you neither one of those partners were in the same, like him just coming out of the bush was like, oh, did you kill her partner over there? And yeah, we find out. I was just like, oh. I'm wondering if the justification could be that Coulter was so caught up because it's the anniversary of Gina's disappearance and stuff, and all that's like racking his brain, that he missed a few steps in this whole regard. Because in his character's name, like Eric or something, because we end up finding out at the heart of this story that, Rini does some research and looks into it and finds out what this is all about. Because Coulter kind of figured it out when he was like, the way they're acting, where it's like, right, it's not Ted they went after, because Bobby looked into it and Ted had already paid off all his debts from the $50,000 he'd won from the lottery. So it's like, what could this be about? And it's like, right, their dad went to get rid of the tablet because they were being followed and that could attract them. But then the mom left, even though she told the kids to stay and wait, and left her on her own. So it's like, right, the mom, you immediately, okay, so it's a witness protection situation. Ted was never the target. It was Connie all along, who's played by Lindy Booth. I was thinking, like, I remembered her from The Librarians. I need to go back to that show. I really love the movies, and I really liked the first season. That's the only season I've seen. I think I saw part of season 2, but not a lot of it. But yeah, that's what, because didn't they do like a reboot / continuation of that, or they're in the process of making one? I can't remember. But yeah, she was one. But I was also confusing her with a different actor in my head. I was like, it's not important. But yeah, but I distinctly remembered her from like The Librarians, but I didn't Librarians. But I confused her from a different show. But either way, it turns out she was part of this kind of, what are they, a mob or something like that? She's from a criminal organization family, and she basically like testified against them. The father went to jail, and basically she divorced her husband and ran away. And I thought it was interesting when you get the reveal of like, oh, who her husband really is, and he shows up and stabs her brother-in-law. I was like, oh, I mean, it seems like they didn't say he died or anything, so I think luckily they got him some medical assistance in time. But the moment he went up there, he had the knife in him. I'm like, are you really about to kill some kids? But then he puts the knife away. It's like, oh, I was like, I guess even as a criminal, you have some morals. But then the way he was going over to like the oldest son, Brett, I was like, oh my God, it's your kid. The youngest is Connie and Ted's, but the oldest is yours, isn't it? And it's like, yeah, she was pregnant with him. No, actually, she already had him at that time, because he was asking Brett. He's like, do you remember me? Because Brett immediately recognized him. I was like, yo. He was a little, like, he probably remembers him enough, because it was like 9 years ago or something like that when she testified and disappeared. So he probably was super young at the time, but it's like, so she wasn't just pregnant, she already had him at that time. But for her, it's like, no, like the moment I divorced you and left you, he stopped being your son. Like, but that's his driving motivation. In fact, he brought people along with him. Because I was thinking for a second that maybe I was like, oh, did he come handle this on his own? But it's like, no, he brought some muscle with him. There's at least that one guy that Coulter took out, the guy that was trying to get some information out of Ted and kind of beating him to a pulp. And it's also interesting timing that, once again, he just happened to show up after, so all the points to leading to like, yeah, he was not not really that he was not really Agent Martinez's partner. I mean, Connie's biggest concern was she was like, this guy is going to kill my entire family just to pay me back for like ruining his family, sending his father to jail. But his main motivation was all about, yeah, he wanted revenge against Connie, but it was also about getting his son back. And he even said like, hey, I'll tell the entire family you're dead. Just let me take my son and go. So that was like his motivating factor this entire time. Once again, getting back at Connie was an added bonus of not only did you take my son, not only did you send my father to jail, you all and betrayed me and everything. Because she had talked about it where it's like she knew who he was, what his family was all about, but she looked the other way until she couldn't anymore, and that's when she testified. She's like, he hates his father so much, but it turns out he's so much like him, which is so interesting and sad. I mean, obviously, there's no time to really get into it, but once again, I don't think you have to worry about her son Brett ever, coming from that, and that being his dad, that meaning like, oh, just like, I think he's going to be the opposite of, he's going to hate his dad, but like, my dad was not a good person, so, but it's going to be a situation of like, it's not going to be that warped thing that was going on with his father, where it's like, oh, I keep blanking on Matt Long's character's name. It was like, was it Eric? I can't remember. Either way, he was like, my dad, like, he hated his dad, but Connie was like, yeah, but he was still very much the same person. And so I don't think she has to worry about that, but I was curious what Coulter had planned when he was like, all right, just let the kids say goodbye. You have to trust me. But she like, right, I guess, because Martinez had already said she was going to be on her way, but I was like, oh, surprised she hadn't gotten there before you. But it's like, right, they were lining up because they didn't know what to expect, what they were walking into. But yeah, Home Chew dude got killed the moment they got Brett away from him. So that was kind of nipped in the bud. But luckily, I mean, they're going to have some complications because despite all that, that family is never going to stop coming after Connie and her family. So, but luckily Martinez was like, because she's going to stick around and make sure like that family is able to disappear. It's really sad too. The only reason why they were found out is because her husband Ted won the lottery and her photo went out there, and that's how they tried to win it. Something simple like that, But also like the fact, I mean, I guess you can't really do much about it, because you can't actually take money anonymously. I don't know why they don't let you do that. Why you kind of have to make it such a public thing that you won the lottery. I don't get that. I mean, I get it. It's like a big thing of like, oh, where you're at. It's like, oh, it's kind of a big deal. It's in the newspaper and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but that's when people come out to woodwork. You're most likely to get attacked because people are like, oh, you got some money now. I'm like, I don't know, man. I think everyone wishes they could just be like, yo, I want to take that money anonymously. Hell, you can give me a third or half the money sometimes, and I will take that just to not be publicly known type of thing. I don't know. It's once again, I'm also talking from ignorance. I don't fully know how that works. Maybe there is reasons behind it, or maybe I've just watched so much television and movies, I assume that's how that worked, but that's not how it works in reality. I don't know. I've never won the lottery, so I don't know. I don't know anyone that's won the lottery, so. Traumatic and complicated situation, but at the end of the day, the entire family's okay. Like I said, I'm pretty sure Craig is still alive. They never really expressly said, but it's like, oh no, you're fine, the kids are okay because of Craig, so, because he's the one that hired Coulter in the first place, so, this all worked out nicely. But yeah, Renee had looked into it and said, like, because of the kidnapping attempt, because of Brett, Connie's son, it leads to a situation of now the entire family's being charged with that, so they're going to be going down, and there's no, like, eventually, after some time, Connie and her family won't have to be in hiding anymore, so. I was kind of thinking the silver lining was going to be like a thing of, well, the rest of the family's okay, but sadly, the dad, Ted, because I was so certain, I was like, oh my god, don't tell me Coulter's going to come across Ted's dead body, but luckily Ted's alive because they were trying to pump him for information, so. But I did like this. I'm a little all over the place, so I do apologize. But I did like this conversation between Coulter and Connie, because there's this whole conversation about, she's like, okay, she's like, I was going to come back for my kids. I wasn't just going to abandon them. I was just trying to make sure we could get away safely and they could stay hidden long enough for me to come back for them. But like, she's like, I know you. He's like, no, I'm not in a position to judge. She's like, yeah, but everyone judges. But it's like, right, considering his upbringing, he's like, I'm not in any position to really say anything, considering like I don't even fully know if what my parents did was out of love or what their reasoning was. I can tell yours came from love, because it's like, right, you do what you think is best at the time. And once again, he's tried to, come to terms with his family circumstances in a similar boat. So he's not going to be as judgy towards Connie. It's just trying to understand the whole situation. So something else I just noticed, what I thought was kind of an interesting little detail. I didn't talk about it last season, but the later episodes of season 1 were no longer named after like the places that the cases are taking place, and it seems like they're kind of continuing the later element of episode titles in the same regard of like they're not tied to the locations, which I thought was kind of an interesting decision. I just looking on IMDb for the next couple episodes, none of them have like the titles of the episodes aren't the locations, they're like a phrase or whatever. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder, I guess maybe they made that decision later in season 1 and they're keeping up with that. I mean, maybe like from a storytelling perspective, there's more of a reason for that. Maybe it ties into the overarching story, or maybe it's just a decision they made going forward. Like, no, and we can't we don't want that to be the naming convention for every episode. So maybe partway through production, they decide to change that. I don't know. Just kind of a neat little detail to think about. There's also the Vilma and Teddy of it all, which I think is going to be interesting. I know the actors who played Teddy, I'd already seen like, once again, I didn't read into much. I just got like Google alerts about it like a little while back that she was not returning, and I don't know what the circumstances are there. I could look into it, but I'm also like, that's her business and it's not mine. So maybe there's a specific reason for it. I don't know, scheduling thing, but the way they kind of wrote it, it's like, oh, Teddy's with her family, and Vilma's like, oh, I'm gonna not be around her as much because it's not as good to be around her while she's dealing with all of that. So I don't know if that's going to be like a story beat of how they explain that, a way of like they are separating. I don't know if that's the storyline where they're going to go with that or not. I don't know. We'll see. Because another element to the story too is also Rini. Obviously, we're setting it up last season. The whole element of her making her own practice and stuff. And yeah, putting it together very nicely. Obviously, it's still offering her assistance to Coulter. But yeah, it's like, was it Rini? Rini's last name is Green. It's like Green and Associates. It's like, what associates? I thought that was her basically saying like she's hiring Bobby and Vilma, but it's like, no, that's kind of Coulter's people, so she can't really do that. So I'm curious to see who she hires on and what work looks like for her going forward. I'm assuming that's going to be probably a lot more helping with Coulter. She probably will be in maybe a lot more of this season. I mean, she was pretty frequently in last season, but she wasn't in every episode. So I wonder if she's going to be in every episode going forward, type of situation. But yeah, like I said, I did not watch the trailer for this because obviously I just finished season 1 like last week or the week before last. So and then obviously I'm getting to this really, really late because literally this will be going up tomorrow, which the new episode will be tonight by the time this recording goes up on YouTube. But I'm so curious, like I said, like I brought up at the beginning, I'm so curious to see what the overarching story is, because it feels like, right, we didn't get a full resolution to any of the stuff with Coulter's family, and I'm wondering, like, there are shows that just straight up go like, yeah, we're doing this storyline, and then like, no, we're just going to abandon it and make something else. I would assume that's not where they're going with this, because that's too prominent of a mystery, but we'll see. Like I said, I just feel like maybe it takes a back seat to the Gina stuff. Maybe there's going to probably be overlap, just from a storytelling perspective. Like, one is going to influence the other, or how Coulter reacts or deals with certain things because of one case affecting him in a certain way, which affects his relationship with said other case, whether it's his family stuff affecting the Gina case or the Gina case affecting his family stuff. So either way, I'm excited to see where the rest of the season ends up taking us, where the next episode in particular ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.